Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. This should be done momentarily, but as Andrea's pointed out, we're on a fairly tight schedule. I first just want to say how happy I am to have been asked to moderate this panel. I told Chuck Wimple, the executive director of HGAC, when he was interviewing me, that one of the things that really appealed to me about coming to a region like Houston was the very strong advocacy community surrounding transportation. And the opportunity to do this, I think, is something that I really appreciate. With that, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce the two speakers for today. So Eliza Paul, the district engineer for the Houston region, and Laura Ryan, Texas Transportation Commissioner, representing the entire state, but really, we know, representing Houston. And with that, if you guys would like to say quick hellos, and then we can jump into the questions.
Well, I just want to thank TAG for introducing us, inviting us to give this State of Texas, State of Houston. And we're glad. I want to thank everybody for showing up. You know, that's a big part of doing everything. And I just want to thank everybody. That's it.
Well, thanks for being here and the invitation from TAG. We appreciate TAG putting this together. Last time I was physically at the State of TxDOT, it was pouring down rain outside, and we had torrential rain and flooding and roads shut down. So I was very pleased to see good weather, but a little nervous when I saw all the umbrellas on the chairs. So, but thank you to everyone for coming out today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you both. I'll just jump right in. So there are a number of topics that we kind of want to talk about, and so I'll kick each one of these off with just kind of an opening question, and then we'll see where the conversation goes and be able to then transition to the next topics that we're going to have. So the first one really is to try to hear more about the status, in brief, the state of TxDOT today. And so I'd like to ask Commissioner Ryan then to just provide some opening comments about TxDOT from the statewide perspective.
No, thank you. And, a lot of people see what we do from the commission meetings, but we cover the state, as Craig said, and we've got 12,000 plus men and women that support everything that we do. And our mission is connecting you with Texas. And we chose that really because we're getting some feedback. That's a lot of what we do, whether it's connect you from city to city to the families. We connect freight, we connect agricultural goods, and everything that comes through. So our also goal is to do it safely. We've got Texas right now by 2050 is projected to be 47 million people. That's a 62% increase in projected population by 2050. Today we're just over about 30 million. So that's 17 million people. And if you think about what the demographers say about the Texas Triangle, about 35 million of those people by 2050 will be in the Texas Triangle. So the challenges that TxDOT faces are immense. And it's to balance rural energy corridors, borders, freight. We have ports, we have land ports. We have 196,000 lane miles that are on system that TxDOT covers and takes care of. And an interesting piece, I think we're doing a sound check as we're going through, so bear with us, please. An interesting piece of that is there's about 1,600 miles that were added to that over the last 5 years, lane miles. And that's the distance between Austin and Toronto, Canada. So a lot of the work that's been going on has continued even during COVID. But I also want to remind everybody that TxDOT is responsible for the maintenance of those roads, is building those roads. We have 55,000 bridges. We have a rail division, intercoastal waterway, and we run a ferry operations 24/7, 365 days a year that actually transport about 8 million people a year. So very diverse in covering the state, but what that does is shows you how diverse our state is. And anytime you have an immense diversity and a breadth of diversity like that, you have challenges to take on.
Eliza, is there any?
I'll talk a little bit about the Houston district. Houston is definitely booming. And with what Commissioner Ryan talked about, the number of people that is moving to Houston, there's about 1,000 people that move into Houston every single day. So Houston District encompasses about 11,000 lane miles of highway system. You know, the people that is driving our vehicle, miles traveled per day, it's about 11 million miles per day also. And so with all the people moving into Houston area and all that, we have a lot of project that is coming up in the pipeline that we are working together to try and progress for the region. The region has a lot of needs, like Commissioner Ryan say, and it's multimodal. We have ferry system, we have roadway system that we have to maintain and construct so that we can ease construction, we can improve the safety of the region and also help with the flooding situation in the Houston. Last year, Houston District led about approximately over $900 million worth of project in the Houston District in 2021 fiscal year. And this year, fiscal year 2022, we are projecting to lead about $1.1 billion worth of projects in the Houston District. And the year after that, in the year 2023, we are projected actually to lead about $2.2 billion worth of project. And when James Koch, my TP&D director, gave me those numbers, and I asked him, I said, James, are you sure we can do this? $2.2 billion, we have never done something like that. But that is what we have in the book currently to try and progress for the Houston District.
Great, thank you. So let's talk just for a moment, hopefully, about the impacts of the pandemic on TxDOT and on the district office, and how that has kind of shaped what TxDOT's doing.
Okay. Well, if you want me to go first, just very quickly, you know, TxDOT really never shut down. My maintenance construction groups continue to work, and we watch the 3 W's, wash your hands, wear your mask, watch your social distance. You know, so we continue to practice that. Our field people work. Our design and our office people did go home and telework and do a lot of the design during this time period. And we were also able to utilize some of the lighter traffic during the early time phases during the pandemic to allow our contractors to work longer hours during that time and be able to progress some of the projects a little bit quicker than what we normally can. One big example is the 610-59 interchange project. We were able to do some of the major lane closures during the traffic, lower traffic volume time, and we were able to progress and get that project, finish up some of the connectors, finish up a lot earlier. The only thing I just want to add is, I told everybody before the pandemic, the Houston District traditionally doesn't have a lot of people telework. I can count with one hand how many people in the Houston District that is actually teleworking, but now I have approximately at least 50%, if not more, of our employees are all teleworking. So I think that is here to stay, and we just have to adjust the way how we deal with teleworking and still get all our projects progressed. In fact, do more work. And some employees actually told me that during the teleconferences, they're actually more efficient because they go meetings of the meetings of the meetings nonstop. So that's something we have to adjust to and get better at doing it also.
Commissioner Ryan?
It's interesting, those meeting after meeting after meeting. I'm happy to, I liked walking down the hall because you were able to take a detour. So it does make you more productive, but challenging. You know, it's interesting when we talk about what is the impact on TxDOT with regard to COVID and the pandemic. And, you know, my initial response is it didn't impact TxDOT. It was another example of how TxDOT is prepared for crisis management because nothing stopped. You know, Eliza talked about our office workers and those in the districts being able to work from home with a telework model and being productive. But we had more than 50% of our team was actually out in the field every single day and never stopped. So we are prepared for that, and we responded to that. So from a COVID standpoint, when I look at how it impacted TxDOT, there's a part of me that says we weren't impacted at all. We continued to let projects, we continued to deliver projects, we continued to pay the bills, and we continued to keep everyone safe. And you know, we can also remember we had a statewide freeze in February of this year as part of that pandemic, and TxDOT continued to be there during that weather. So I would say that we haven't in some ways impacted much. The other part of what Eliza has said that we will have to be impacted by, and we'll have to study this because I don't know the answer, but with people working from home and working in offices, what I see is that we have a nonstop rush hour because I don't see that traffic seems to have slowed down much. When I'm out and about right now at any given point in the day, it seems very heavy and fairly steady. And I think that we're finding is that a lot of people are going to the grocery store in the middle of the day versus everyone going at the end and those types of things. So the question will really be, what does it do to our modeling? And how are we able to respond to it? Do I think it's significant changes? Probably not, because we're all doing the same types of things. It's just how do we model that into what does it look like?
Right, thank you. And I'll just add to that, that's exactly what our hard data show as well. Our traffic counts and traffic flow patterns, that's absolutely what they're showing, is that the peaks are coming and going still, but they're smaller, particularly the morning peak has changed quite a bit. But the overall traffic volumes seem to be, and Eliza, I'm sure you'd back this up, are right back where they were, if not higher, than before the pandemic started. So we'll turn quickly then to safety issues, and I know, Commissioner Ryan, this is one of your main issues, something you speak about frequently at the commission meetings. However, traffic crashes and fatalities and serious injuries still remain a serious problem for TxDOT, for the state, for the region. And so with that, I'll ask just the open, broad question, of what can we do, what can we continue to do, and then is there more we could be doing? And I'll leave it with that. And it's safety, so there's a lot of solutions, I'm sure.
No, I appreciate that. I'll never pass an opportunity to talk about safety. I am not usually really good at pleading and begging, but I will tell you this is one subject that I don't mind doing. We're going to show you a video before we move on from this subject that I think makes another just amazing impact, and it's from the perspective of an individual that actually had the experience and was on the other end of a crash. But, we are just weeks away, maybe a week and a half from a 21st anniversary, which is November 7th, 2000. And that's the last deathless day that Texas has seen on its roads. 21 years. We can't even get to one day with 0 deaths. I get the report, many of you, if anyone's heard me speak, I talk about the report that I get at 6:01 a.m. every morning. And it tells me how many fatalities we've had year to date, but it also shows the last few years. And, I want to give you, I looked at it this morning and I wrote these numbers down, but as of this morning, we've had 3,356 fatalities on our roadways. And again, these aren't numbers. I have stressed that over and over. They could be someone in our own households, within our own families that doesn't come home tonight. I've had the privilege of speaking to family members that were brave enough to share the story. And they're tough. They're tough stories. They're tough to listen to. But as of this morning, we are averaging 11.5 fatalities a day. Last year, we ended the year with 10.6. And in 2019, we ended at 9.9. So we are going in the wrong direction. 3,356 as of this morning. All year long in 19, we had 3,623. So we are about to very shortly surpass the 2019 numbers. And if you look at the top 3 causes, it's failed to drive in a single lane. So all sorts of reasons that can be. People looking at phones, distracted, yelling at kids, whatever in the back seat. We've all kind of had experiences in cars. Failure to control speed. The pandemic hurt that. We actually saw a lot of people in higher fatalities last year, and the largest impact was speed. But we do have the congestion back, which in some ways maybe is good because the speeds are slowing down a little, but we're still seeing the fatalities. And then driving under the influence. You know, Andrea talked a little bit about unity and the differences and things, and there's a lot of different opinions on why we have fatalities and how to fix it. But the last thing I'll say to this is I can't stress enough that it's individual responsibility. It's when we get behind the wheel. Are you doing all the right things? You know, last year we lost 900 people to just not wearing a seatbelt. We lost 1,100 people to speeding, 661 under the influence, and 319 to distracted driving. These are all preventable things. And I've had comments made that TxDOT should be responsible enough that we should engineer roads to make up for those. And I can tell you we try really hard. We had $600 million that was put to just safety roads, safety, and every project now, the safety factors start at planning. We don't wait for delivery. And funding is not, with our safety tools, funding isn't a challenge. If we need to do something, we know that it's better to get it in planning. So I can't encourage everyone enough to put the phone down, hands on the, when I went through driver's ed, it was at school, and, we learned 10 and 2. Eyes on the road, head forward, 10 and 2. And I guess I can, we say often go back to the basics. Maybe it's go back to the basics and keep our hands on the wheel. But please encourage everyone you know. I am stubborn. My husband will attest to that. So I don't plan to give up on this point, but I really would like to see us make a dent in it. And it's going to take everyone.
I really don't have a whole lot to follow up, but what I'm going to say, out of the over 3,000 people fatalities, Houston's number is 598 today. So that's the number of fatalities that we have in Houston, and it's also higher than what we normally are at this point in time. So what Houston has been doing is we have been doing some of the safety projects, adding rumble stripes on the shoulder and in the middle of the freeway in the median, adding median cable barriers, some of those projects. We are looking at the bridge roads to try and see if we can have built better bridge road because some of those are old and obsolete, and so that it will take the hit a little bit better when somebody hit it. We're also looking at intersection work to try and improve the intersection signals and the way the intersection is configured to improve safety. But what I'm going to, and the speed, we're trying to, people are driving a lot faster during COVID, and we have put messages on the DMS sign saying slow down. I saw this morning, there's a say that slow down on your drive, you are already in Texas. So you don't have to rush anymore. So I mean, we're trying to every which way to try and do to improve the safety. But the bottom line, like Commissioner Ryan said, is really up to everybody, up to each individual person to take responsibility for safety. And the other thing, what we can do is go home, tell your teenage kids, tell your neighbors, tell all your friends and families, together we're going to make this better. TxDOT cannot do this alone. Every single one have to put in responsibility to do that. If one person doesn't follow the rules, and they can have a single car, and a lot of the time it's a serious accident, and sometimes it goes to a fatality. So we need every single person to work together to try and help us solve this safety problem.
And I know we have a video, but Craig, real quick.
Right.
So to that point, I have a friend that we do a annual a girls' fishing trip weekend, and we did that recently, and she called to coordinate some things, and she said, well, I'm calling you because I'm driving, and I have somebody that is stubborn and drives me nuts about texting and driving. And I said, well, you must have a very special friend then. And, it's kind of an ongoing joke because I give her grief all the time to slow down and put the phone down. So it's okay to give people grief that you care about. So I can tell you, my personal friends will tell you I am a real pain in the rear when it comes to things like that. So it's okay to be a pain. I'm encouraging everybody to do it.
Great. Thank you both for those comments. And I think, are we ready to play the video?
Play that moment in my head multiple times a day. There wasn't anything I could do. I was out of control. From the time that I looked down at my phone to the time that I looked up, 8 seconds had passed. I never realized how far you travel in 8 seconds.
We see it too often, and Tuesday was another example where someone's killed on our roads for no reason other than someone else's poor choice to make that phone more important than driving. We shouldn't need a law to tell us to pay attention while driving. We should just be paying attention while driving because we know it's the right thing to do. And had that happened on Tuesday afternoon, there's no doubt in my mind that Mr. Bursig would have been home.
He was stopped at a stoplight, and I hit him when I was going 63 miles an hour, and hit so hard that my truck went on top of his car. And I couldn't steer. I couldn't. The brakes didn't do anything. I couldn't do anything.
I've heard the reports that the fire department took hours to get him extracted from the vehicle. That is a haunting image in my mind that I think about all the time.
We'll never get to see our dad again. And it's all because of the 8 seconds that Sam decided to look at his phone.
Okay, well, we'll let that sink in for just a moment. And then we'll transition to an easier topic, I hope. But we want to talk a little bit about some of the really key projects and kind of planning for the future. And so with that, let's just start with the one item that I'm sure everyone asks about frequently. I know I do, and that frankly has been something that in my 9 months here so far has probably consumed, I'd say, 2 or 3 of those months total of my entire work time. But let's talk about, let's see if I can get any kind of updates on the North Houston Highway Improvement Project.
Which one?
Yeah.
Not familiar. No, it's probably the elephant in the room, and I think, the one thing we all have in common is transportation, and this is a really key project for the region. So I think Eliza and I will both give different updates or added updates. But so right now, for those that don't know, the project, it's been about 15 years in the works and was actually ready to be let. We should have been moving forward. There's been a lot of work done on it over the last 5 years, a lot of community engagement and a lot of listening and a lot of involvement. The project's on pause right now by FHWA, and in August, which is every year when the commission moves forward and votes on the UTP, which is kind of the planning document. There's 8,600 projects in the UTP that get voted on, and it's about $74 billion. There was a lot of discussion at that time of the responsibility that the commission has to the whole state of Texas, those funds and this project. And and we don't know with FHWA when they will release this pause. To be very frank, we're not 100% sure the cause of the pause because we can't get a lot of information right now. That said, there are discussions going on, and there are positive discussions going on with FHWA regarding the project, and there are positive discussions going on regionally. And I can encourage everyone in this room to please reach out to FHWA, because one of the things that I think there's an unintended consequence to what's going on right now, and TxDOT is not able to work on mitigation. We're not able to make commitments for things that people are not happy with because we've been put on pause. We can't spend money to design. We can't spend money to do those kinds of things. So it is a little bit of a circular situation that the number one thing we need is FHWA to release that pause so that we can go to work and continue to engage with the communities as we have. The second thing that I think is important with the project is that regionally we have to find ourselves united. And I love a good debate. And my husband will probably tell you that one too. But and part of a really good debate is valuing the different perspectives and valuing disagreements. And we have that with this project. But I think what's happening is those disagreements are dividing this region. And FHWA is feeding off of that because we're allowing them they're not going to make a decision. So one of the things that I look for is items in the project that benefit the region that we can all agree with, because we know there's things that we're not going to agree with. And those are the things we have to keep working on. But if we can find a way to identify and kind of carve off the things that we all agree on, then we can spend our energies on the things that we don't agree on and work through those and find solutions. So, TxDOT's been accused of a lot of things through this project, and that's hard because I know the men and women, I know Eliza, and I know the Houston team and everyone that works on it, and they care, and they work hard to do the right thing. So it's hard to sit and listen to some of the things that are going on because those are not the people that are sitting at the table that are trying to have a collaborative discussion. So I would encourage that. But I'm going to real quickly, before I turn it over to Eliza, just kind of if you look at the dollars, the project's anywhere between $7 and $9 billion, depending on how you look at it, what's included. And it's about 12% of the total state's UTP. So it is an important project. 32% of that budget was funded at commission discretion. So it's 3 segments. Segment 3, which is the first section we will work on, is fully funded. Segment 1 and 2 don't have any money on it right now. It actually happens to be where most of the conflict is occurring, which I find interesting because the one that's fully funded, the segment that probably benefits the region the most with flooding, improvement in housing, improvement in bike and pedestrian lanes. There's actually additional connections that will occur in the city that were broken years ago. And those are the things that are also on hold. So those are important things. 25% of that 32% that was Cat 12, which is commission discretion, is going to the mitigation efforts. And that's about $2 billion that are going to fund ways to make up for areas that our environmental has shown that we must mitigate the negative consequences. So the efforts are there, the intentions are there. But we have to be able to have the opportunity to make good on those intentions and those efforts. So anyone that cares about this project, I encourage you to send letters to FHWA and let them know that it's important to the region and that we must be allowed to be able to move forward so we can continue to find ways to work together. Eliza, anything to add?
The only thing I want to add is the I-45 job. This 5 segment of the most congested roadway is in this I-45 segment. The freeway infrastructure is aging. It was built in the 1960s and part 60s, 70s. So the freeway is very old. It doesn't meet current design standard. There's a lot of safety element there that we need to upgrade. On the drainage side, there's also a lot of elements we need to upgrade because the drainage was put in the 60s and 70s when we built the roadway back then. So now is really past time for us to do those kind of improvement for the roadway. The other thing I want to point out is we've built many jobs, in Houston, and there's not one single project that everybody say at the end of the job, I agree with everything on the project. That there's always differences in any project. That there are some people like certain elements, others doesn't like certain elements. Even after we build it, there's still people that like certain elements and they don't like certain elements. And we have been trying to do a lot of things to try and mitigate a lot of the comments, that the people have on the housing side, on the transit side, on the green space side, on all those other elements that we've been working. And the region also needs to probably understand that there's a huge economic benefit that is tied to this project. It's about 43 billion. We put a pencil and calculations to it, and we came out with the number, right or wrong. It is an estimate, but we know that is a big number that is tied to that. The other thing that we also know that, so what we're looking at is like for every dollar you spend, you actually get back $7 of what you're spending on this project. So without the 45 project, there's not going to be any safety improvement to the I-45, which is a very old freeway. Without the I-45 project, we're not going to see any of the drainage improvements significant. Some of y'all in this room help us work out a lot of those drainage improvements, and any of the other benefits, the congestion relief, the connectivity, the transit, the freight, and all that. Right now is a one-lane reversible HOV is what you got in the middle of the freeway. So there is a lot of benefits, and I know we are never going to all agree that this is what we're going to do. At the end of the day, there's still going to be certain things that TxDOT does that people that doesn't like. There's going to be certain things that we do that people love. So and we're trying to incorporate as many things as we can, and we know the current situation is changing. With the innovation, which I think Craig's going to talk about a little bit later, with all the innovations that's happening in the freight industries, in the Google, Amazon, delivery, trucks, and all those things, we have to look at all those things, and we are looking at all those things to try and see what the changes and the differences it's going to make. But the bottom line is we need the freeway to be rebuilt. Without that, we're not going to get any of these other benefits that comes with it. So.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up then, and I think, Commissioner, you kind of touched on this a little bit. What are the ways in which the status, the pause on the NHHIP are starting to impact other projects in the region? I'll just note from the MPO's perspective, we assume that project is on the timeline that it has been on for the past few years. And so as it gets delayed, that potentially starts to ripple through some of our planning activities and how we program our funds for projects that are currently included in our transportation improvement program and regional transportation plan. So I'm wondering from the state's perspective, what kind of ripple effects are there from that as well?
No, it's a great point. There's indirect and direct, and funding is definitely a direct impact. For every year that it's delayed, it's exponential of millions of dollars that it costs that we have to take out of the limited pot that we have to fund and keep that project on track. With the growth that we have, what also happens is as projects get delayed, other projects that were relying on this get delayed and those get pushed back. So the population is going to increase, the growth is going to increase, and yet as dollars, precious dollars, end up getting spent on just the inflation aspect because we weren't able to get it done on time, That means the scope will probably have to be reduced, which means a lot of the benefits that this project will bring, the region won't see. And Houston is a major city, and I think we'll talk about it. But one of the key things I think we need to understand with this project is that indirectly the country relies on it. When you look at the freight movement that goes through this region, with having the ports that we have and the rails and the land port that comes up, the Segment 3 project is 45, I-10, and 69 that come together in downtown Houston. And that's where the trucks move. I actually texted this morning because I wanted to make sure I had this number right, but 13,000 trucks, freight, 18-wheelers, cross our Mexico-Texas border a day. It's projected within the next couple of years to go to 20,000 a day. And we've done previous studies on the Freight Advisory Committee that show that every one of those trucks within 72 hours touches another state in our country. So everybody, we have to move, and the more I check, we're doing more online, we're ordering more. So it isn't just getting the freight, the economic aspect, but Eliza mentioned too, it's that last mile delivery. And every one of us gets Amazon packages at our door. Well, they come from somewhere, they're put in a warehouse, and then they are moved to locations where they can then be delivered to our homes. That's not going to stop. And the more dense an area gets and the more the population increases, then that challenge continues to increase. And that is another balancing act that we have with projects like this. It is flooding, it is hurricane evacuation, it is freight movement, it is public transit, it is single cars, it is autonomy and connected car dynamics. There's so much coming at us that every day this project is delayed, it puts us probably years behind.
Eliza from the district office.
And I don't even know if I want to go there, but and I definitely don't want to speak for the commissioners and everything, but if the project is delayed indefinitely, okay, if the FHWA pause continues to exist and happen, TxDOT or the commissioner, they cannot afford to let $5 billion sit, without progressing. So, and everybody know to backfill, anybody that does any project know to backfill $5 billion is not an easy thing to do. It's going to be an extremely difficult thing to do. It will take the entire state to put projects together so that we can utilize that dollar. And what I'm trying to say is, I think TxDOT will have to do what we have to do to utilize the money that was given to us so that we can progress on projects that will benefit Texas, as a whole. So Houston is going to do our share to backfill this project. We're going to do everything we can to backfill the project, but it's not easy. And James over here, and he's my number one guy to progress project, and I'll put him on the stand against anybody else in the state to progress project for us. So if anybody can do it, he can do it. So, but what I see is this project is ready to go, as Commissioner Ryan said. It's ready to go out the door, and the tremendous benefit that the entire region is going to have, that we can end up losing that benefits and everything that we can. So, I don't want to say like a parent, if the kids start fighting, we're fighting internally, we can't agree on something, the parents over there to try and say, y'all get time out, y'all need to get together and resolve your issues and move on. And I think we're there. We need to do the timeout, we get back together and talk about it and resolve and get the issues and move on. We just can't continue to disagree indefinitely.
And I think is, which is true, and then to the impact on other projects, the other projects become unfunded, but it's also a lot of the innovation that I think is key that we are going to lose as a region. There's, like we talked a little bit about AV, platooning trucks, the broadband, the connected, and we talked about safety. A lot of projects that we have more that we have coming in the pipeline have more modern technology. And the cars are built with those technologies, and buses are built with those technologies. So we are losing the ability to keep up from an innovation and technology standpoint with any project. That 8,600 projects that are in the UTP all have various features of safety. And so I think anytime any project gets delayed, especially when we're trying to modernize our infrastructure, I think it's a major impact to the state in ways that we won't see for years.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's talk briefly then about, just touching on that, I guess, the ways in which the transportation system is changing and the sort of the new demands that are being put on, TxDOT, as well as just the increasing awareness that people have of transportation being more than just, trucks or cars on a highway. Or local roads, and it involves delivery vehicles, and it involves trip planning software and all kinds of things like that. Largely thanks to Silicon Valley, which is gradually relocating to Texas apparently. But I'm curious, what that creates new demands for funding. It creates new demands for how projects are planned, where we'll fit in our partnership role, as well as how projects are delivered. And so I'm just wondering if there are some key points you'd like to raise about those. I'll start with you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'll stay on the innovation aspect. And it's interesting that we're sitting in a metro. If we were sitting in West Texas, some of our discussions might be a little different on what the roads need. But they are needed. They're all needed. And it's roads, transportation, all sorts of infrastructure. And when you talk about change, the world is changing. And I don't think that anyone that feels that TxDOT doesn't hear that and know that and isn't working to respond to that, I guess we need to make our commission meetings a little bit more exciting. But we are working on those things, and the technology is needed. When you look at concrete, I look at concrete in so many different ways. You can put buses on it. You can put trucks on it. You can put cars on it. I guess you could put rail on it in the right situation. But it's needed. But we also need the broadband because cars are connected. We need to know that trains are coming and the cars need to be able to talk to themselves. We need to be able to communicate with the roads, and that's coming. Managed lanes can be used for autonomous vehicles. They're coming too. I don't know when or how or exactly, but they're coming. So what are the regulations and how do we put them on our roads? Do we let them run freely on our roads, or do we use our managed lanes for those types of things? Electric vehicles, another option that is coming and is here actually. But there are often, credits and ways to manage that, and can those managed lanes be used that way? We use them for high occupancy vehicles right now, but really managed lanes will help us manage the technology and the innovation that's coming too. So there is a lot of ways to manage these types of things. We've actually got some pilot corridors that are under development, one in Austin, that everything is connected. And they're going to use that area to see how the autonomous vehicles work. There's also a connected freight corridor that's about 900 miles. And that's important too, because when you look at safety and freight, little things like where do the truck drivers stop? And how does that impact our roads and congestion and safety? And we need to be able to tell them how far they can go and where they can safely stop and stay. And we should think about those things because they're driving because we've ordered all that stuff. So innovation is fascinating, and I think it's a big part of what's coming. And we are looking at it and responding. But again, part of it is balancing how do you do that in a metro and what's needed there and what's needed in rural Texas And then what's needed in certain areas of rural Texas, meaning the energy corridor. We have a pilot going on right now with Chambers County to move freight in different ways. And we did a lot of it because we wanted to make sure that certain roadways that are incredibly populated and have a lot of new ingress egress, that the trucks move around it, but when they're on it safely. So how do we stay connected to them? So I think the innovation is how do we integrate it? Some of it will change, but I don't think transportation as we know it is going away, at least in any of our lifetimes. So it's more integration of how do we plug that change in.
Mm-hmm. Eliza, are you seeing ways that these innovations are starting to change or impact the way that the Houston district has to approach problems?
Well, yes, definitely. You know, we are actually constantly looking at innovations and stuff like that. I was going to talk a little on the freight side. What we have been coordinating with all the ports, the Port of Houston, Port of Galveston, and Port Freeport, and to try and look at all the different roadways that is close to their area to try and see what we can do to improve those systems. If there's a way that we can learn how the truck movement is in and out of the ports and where do they station. Another thing that they were really looking at is truck parking. Parking is a big issue for truck, and we are looking at, it's a statewide project also to try and look at increasing or improving parking spaces for freight and truck. But on the innovation side, some of you have heard what we have kind of rolled out as the real concept, regional express access lane concept. The real concept is we are really utilizing, you can call it managed lane, express lane, HOV lane, whatever lane. We're utilizing those lanes to connect major hubs. We call it transportation hubs in the region. You know, and what we envision this future transportation hub is, it's got all kinds of different multimodal transportation mode included in this transportation hub. There's going to be the freight traffic can go in and stop at the transportation hub and pick up something and keep going. The transit can land itself into the transportation hub and pick up passengers, drop off passengers and all that. The Uber and Lyft can come in, and maybe in future we have autonomous vans, vehicle just sits there in the transit hub waiting to pick up passengers. You know, when I was in Hong Kong growing up, they have these things called 14 passengers van. And they don't have any stops. You know, they drive around Hong Kong, which is, as y'all know, is one of the most congested areas. 14 passenger van, so you just go out in front of your building and you flag one of them down. And they stop, they pick you up, and then they take you, they have a route, of course, on the route, and then they pick you to whatever you need. And if you want to hop off, you tell the driver and you hop off. And everybody just hop in and out. And the autonomous vehicle can easily do that. It's like a mobile taxi, really, but it's more than one person in the taxi, and you just go from one place to. So the transportation hub, what we were kind of looking at some of the areas like Northwest Transit Mall is a good location, downtown is a good location. Some of those areas out west, the New Transit Center, West Park is also a good location. So, but we have to connect these hubs with roadways, you know, with concrete, essentially, with concrete, so that the bus can drive on the concrete from one hub to the next hub. Your train can drive from hub from one to the other. So that is still in a very early stage, but that's something we're trying to roll out, and we need our partners to help us work together on this concept. One of the other things that we are rolling out is the Connect Smart application. It's an application that you put on your phone, and when you go in your phone, it actually tells you what modes of transportation you can use. If you take a bus, you can pick it up from here to here, and it will take you 25 minutes to get here. If you drive, it will take you 20 minutes or whatever. And if you take something else, it will, if you bike, it will be an hour, so on and so forth and things. And it also, if you want to take a bus, it allows you to purchase the ticket for the bus on the app. And what you do also is you get incentive for using certain modes of transportation. So it's all in this app that we've been working. It's a grant that TxDOT got previously, and we're working with TTI and different agencies to try and get it working. So it's an app that people can use, and you can get incentivized. You get coupon to McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever for using certain different types of modes of transportation. So that's something we're trying to work on and roll out also for the region to try and help with getting people using different types of modes of transportation.
Thank you. So I'm just going to have one or two more questions, and then we'll open it up, I think, so that there'll be an opportunity, Andrea, maybe for some questions from the audience?
It's already one.
Okay. Is it already? Right. Okay. So really quickly, though, before then we perhaps wrap up, then I'll at least, I just want to maybe ask about what you're hearing about the prospects for infrastructure bill from Congress, and how that may impact funding opportunities in the region.
Yeah, that's the crystal ball that I keep in the closet. So I have dusted it off with regard to the infrastructure bill. And this was a question that comes up often, and day by day, I think by the end of today, anything could change. But what we do know is that as structured right now, it'll be about 5 years, and it's about 29 billion, over the 5-year mark. In 1 year, probably in fiscal year 2022, we'd expect about $5 billion. But it breaks out, as we know it right now, about $110 billion for roads, bridges, and other major projects, $66 billion for passenger rail freight, and about $39 billion for public transportation. And there's a lot of other types of things in there. But it also impacts the FAST Act, which right now we only have a month. They gave us a month extension. The key, I think, to this kind of the bill and the money real quick is that money like this allows us to do projects that we can pull things forward. It also allows us and opens kind of the color of money, so to speak. We have categories of money that we can use on things either combined with projects or projects that we may not have been able to pull forward because that category of money's bucket was exhausted. So it's a positive for the state. And then the other piece to that is because it's a diverse use of the money, it will really create partnerships. I think there's a divide right now, but I said the other day, two things bring people together, money and crisis. We find unity all the time in those two factors. We seem to put our differences aside. So I'm hoping that some of this comes forward, and I hope it will reignite some of the partnerships so that different regions can work together to bring projects to the state.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, I think I'd like to thank both of you for your time, and TAG and all of you who attended today. I'd like to thank you for coming and listening, and we really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you.
Well, and real quick, just thank you, Craig, I'd like to thank Craig for moderating and the time he put in to work with us to try to make sure this went smooth. And from a regional standpoint, HGAC is a great partner, and we appreciate being able to be on stage with him.
Thank you.